Meet Bob. Bob is a 30-year-old guy who works in a corporate job and has a very average life. Every day in his free time he just watches TV and drinks beer. But Bob decides to change something. He has always been a fan of One Punch Man and he decides to become one himself. And he's gonna do that by trying out his own routine.
100 sit-ups, 100 push-ups, and 100 squats! Do it every single day!
He decides to skip the 10-kilometer run because he wants to become strong and muscular, and we all know that cardio kills gains. So the training arc begins. Completing the first day takes him like 3 hours, and the next day he's barely able to get out of bed because he's so fucking sore. But he doesn't give up so easily. He remembers the quote from the show.
Even when my arms started making weird clicking noises, I kept doing push-ups.
A week goes by and Bob suddenly notices that his daily trainings don't make him sore anymore. He pushed through it and overcame it. And the whole training session now takes him just half the time it used to before. Motivated by that surge of visible progress, he keeps going. After 1 month, completing the whole training session takes him just 30 minutes, and it becomes a part of his daily morning routine. He also notices that he gained a bit of muscle in his upper body. But what's strange is that One Punch Man training suddenly stopped being challenging. It doesn't challenge him at all anymore, it's just a part of his life. And the worst part, it stopped becoming easier as well. He plateaued at 30 minutes, he just can't get himself to complete that workout quicker. Bob realizes that his body has completely adapted to the stress from that particular workout, and repeating it every single day no longer stresses him enough to disrupt the state of homeostasis in his body, and as a result cause more adaptation. So he decides to go all in. He purchases a squat rack, a bench and a barbell with some weights, and he sets up his own home gym in his garage. He does some research and finds online a very good training program that people recommend. It consists of doing a barbell squat, bench press and bent over row 3 times per week and adding 5 pounds on every single workout. Sounds simple enough, thinks Bob. At first, the back squat was pretty challenging for Bob. He almost lost his balance a couple of times. But he doesn't give up, he trains regularly 3 times per week, and even though he is adding 5 pounds on every workout to every one of his lifts, it just keeps becoming easier and easier to perform them. At first it doesn't really make sense to Bob why that happens. He already plans out his trip to the World's Strongest Man event because the maths checks out. If he will keep that progress going for 6 months more, his strength will be on super elite level. However, 1 month later, something strange happens. He barely completes his 5 sets of squats and he actually fails on his bench press. Bob is confused. Why did the progress stop? He's adding more and more stress every time, so his body should just keep adapting. What's wrong? Actually, it's a good question for the viewer. What happened to Bob? Why did he plateau? I will give you a few seconds to answer that. I hope you got an answer right now. Basically, when we train regularly and we become stronger, we are able to cause more damage to our body on every single training session. The reason why Bob has progressed so effectively at the beginning is because he was so weak that he just wasn't able to cause much stress, cause much damage to his own body. And thus, the whole stress recovery adaptation cycle took him just 2 days. He was able to recover and get stronger in just 2 days. But now, once he got a bit stronger, he actually causes more damage to his body and he naturally needs more rest after every single workout to get back to normal and even gain some strength. So let's say Bob somehow realized that he is not fully recovered between every single workout. So now, instead of training every 2nd day, he starts training every 3rd day. And that fixes his problem. However, after a couple of weeks of nice progress, stagnation comes again. But now Bob knows exactly what to do. He starts training every 4th day, and the cycle repeats a couple of times. And about a month or 2 later, Bob's finds himself again plateauing. He's just not able to complete the full workout with heavier weights, even though he rests like 6 days between every single training session. So what is the problem now? Why doesn't that training work for Bob? Even though he's training hard, harder than last time, and he's resting enough, definitely enough. Basically the reason right here is the lack of variation. It's really interesting. It turns out our body is not only able to adapt and build tolerance to a certain amount of stress, but it is also able to build tolerance to the certain kind of stress. And that is the key word. So in your training, you should not only care about the amount of stress you're providing, but also the kind of stress you're providing. Let me explain that further. The body can build tolerance to mainly 3 things in your training. The first being the training threshold, which basically means the amount of reps and sets you're doing. For example, Bob was constantly doing just 5 sets of 5 reps. So naturally, his body built a tolerance to that certain training threshold. The second thing is exercises. Obviously, Bob is constantly doing just the same exercises, so his body has adapted to those exercises. It no longer wants to produce more adaptation for these particular exercises. And the third thing is the method and the speed of progressive overload. Bob's method of progressive overload is very simple. He just adds 5 pounds to every lift on every single workout. It is a very simple and repetitive concept. So his body naturally adapted to it. It built a tolerance to that specific method of progressive overload. If you think about it, it's really crazy. It's like an AI suddenly getting self-conscious. You know, your body adapts to very specific variables of training. It's mind-blowing for me. So what can Bob do now to start progressing again? Basically introduce more variety to his training. And he can do that mainly by doing 3 things. First, modifying the intensity and the volume. So for example, instead of doing 5x5, he could switch to 3 sets of 10 reps. That would be a completely different stimulus for the body when it comes to the training threshold. The second thing he could do is just switch the exercises. And he doesn't need to switch them completely. For example, stop doing squats completely and switch to another exercise. He just needs to switch the variation, for example from high bar back squat to front squat, or even a slight change like making his stance wider. Just that would make a real difference. And the third thing he can do is just modify the pattern of progressively overloading. So instead of just adding 5 pounds on every single workout to every lift, he could start doing like 1 light workout per week and only add weight 2 times per week. Or he could even start adding weight once per week and do 2 light workouts per week. There are really a lot of variables, and this also would introduce a lot of variety to his training. So as you can see, each of these methods is really powerful, but the best results often come when you combine a couple of them, 2 or 3. And doing that will actually make you experience something that feels exactly like newbie gains, even if you are an advanced athlete already. And that is just crazy. So let's summarize the whole story with Bob and what we have discussed already. Rule 1, progressive overload. This is the first and the most important rule with strength training, and it is just to provide more stress to your body over time. This is exactly something Bob lacked when he was doing his One Punch Man workouts, because he was basically repeating the exact same amount of stress every single day. The amount of stress wasn't getting higher. So progressive overload basically means doing more reps, more sets, increasing the weight, slowing down the eccentrics. There are really a lot of options. Obviously you could say that he was progressively overloading by doing the whole training session a bit quicker, and it made him progress. As you could see, it made him progress from doing the workout in 3 hours to completing the whole thing in just 30 minutes. But again, his body has very quickly built a tolerance to that certain kind of progressive overload, so it naturally stopped working. Even though Bob was really trying, he couldn't complete his workout in less than 30 minutes. And that is why his lifting journey made him progress for a lot longer than that One Punch Man workout, because he was increasing the weight on every single workout, so that progressive overload method was a lot more challenging for his body, and it took just a lot longer time for the body to become tolerable, build a tolerance to it. And we don't necessarily have to increase the weight on every single workout. We could, for example, do one heavy workout and one light workout in that week. However, generally speaking, just every single consecutive week should provide more stress to your body than the last week. As simple as that. Second rule, enough recovery. So when we are beginners, we are really fucking weak and we are just not able to cause much damage to our body. And that is exactly the reason we are often able to fully recover and gain strength in just 2 days. So we can just train on every other day. Exactly as Bob did with his lifting. However, with time, as we get more and more strong, we just cause more damage to our body on every single workout and we need just more time to recover from it. So this was the second thing Bob realized. He was just resting for too little between his training sessions. So the second rule of overcoming plateaus is to just make sure that you do have enough rest in your training program. So the third rule of overcoming plateaus is just incorporating some variety to your training program on regular basis. But how to actually do that in a logical and systematical way? Let me explain that. If you are a beginner, you can really just keep it simple. If you are doing like 5 sets of 5 reps with a high bar back squat like Bob did, you could just switch the training threshold and switch the exercise to a different variation. So you could just do like 3 sets of 10 reps with front squats. Or you could go the other way and increase the intensity. So instead of doing 5 sets of 5 reps, you could do 5 sets of 3 reps with heavier weights. And the same change back squat to front squat. So both of these methods would provide a completely different stimulus for the body. And I can guarantee you that you would feel like a newbie again. And the interesting thing is even that if you focus on front squats and you completely ditch doing back squats for a certain period of time, your back squat 1 rep max will not decrease. Even it's quite possible that it would increase, because doing front squats would further improve your quads, will just make your quads stronger, so that could definitely help you with doing back squats. And this is actually one of the goals of strength training. Progressing with one exercise until you face a plateau, and then ditching that exercise completely and switching to another one. So you progress with that second exercise again until you reach a plateau, and in the meanwhile, the first exercise, you just become detrained to it. So when you finally come back to it, this exercise is like new for you, because you are detrained from it, you know? And it basically acts as a novel stimulus again, so you can just keep progressing with that first exercise again, while you're getting detrained of the second exercise. I hope you get what I mean, because when I understood that, it was like a complete game changer in my strength training. I was no longer afraid of abandoning certain exercises, because I knew that as far as I just train a similar movement pattern, that exercise 1 rep max could even increase while I don't do it. And when I finally get back to that exercise, I will be easily able to progress it even more. And the last thing I want to discuss in this video is the splitting your training into training your base and training your peak. Basically a model of a pyramid in your training. So the rule of specificity says that our body adapts to something the quickest if on our trainings we exactly mimic the activity we want to get good at. So when we want to get our bench press as high of a 1 rep max as possible, for example we're going to some kind of a competition, the best way to train for that would be just repeating 1 rep maxes on our training session. And this is actually how a lot of pros train right before the competition. And right here I tried 110, but it didn't. But the funny thing is that if we were to completely abandon bench press and instead focus on growing our pecs and growing our triceps, then if we would come back to doing bench press and train it for a while, we would actually become significantly stronger, because a bigger muscle equals stronger muscle. So this is exactly why we split strength training into training the base and into peaking. And naturally, the wider our base is, the higher the peak can be. And not understanding that phenomenon is also the reason why so many people train for like 10 years but they are literally using the same exact weights for 5 years. Everyone hears that the best way to increase your strength is to do reps from 1 to 5. But then there are people who just constantly train that rep range from 1 to 5, literally for years, and they don't get stronger. Why is that? Because their base is just really narrow, so their peak can no longer get higher. They just keep bumping onto that peak with that rep range of 1 to 5, and they are not able to increase that peak because their base is just really narrow. So this is the reason why so many people plateau at the gym. If those people were to introduce some higher volumes and lower intensities, maybe grow some muscle on their training session, their progress would skyrocket again. Their base would just get wider. So if they would come back to the 1 to 5 rep range again, their peak would get higher this time because just the base is more wide. You can also see how this ties with the principle of variety. Basically, when we are switching from base building to peaking, both of these things are a completely different stimulus for our body, and this is just the best way to grow and make progress long term. You also might have heard about the concept of periodization. It basically is a structured way to smoothly go from base building with a lot of volume and low intensity to peaking with a lot of intensity and very little volume. So now you can hopefully see why it is so effective and why so many advanced lifters use it regularly. However, this is not a video about periodization, so I'm not going to talk about this, but if you want such a video, just drop a comment below and I will definitely make it. So to summarize everything, in order to beat plateaus, you need 1. Progressive overload, 2. Enough rest between your training sessions in your training program, 3. Variation, either in the form of switching the exercise, in the form of changing the training threshold, or in the form of changing the method and the speed of progressively overloading. Or you could also just combine a couple of these. And the 4th thing, be aware of under and over specialization. Basically be aware of the strength training pyramid and splitting your training into base building and peak heightening. If you account for all of these 4 things in your training, there is just no way you will be facing plateaus. And if you will, there is just no way you will be stuck at those plateaus because you will know exactly how to deal with them. So that is all for today. I really hope you enjoyed that video. I really hope you find it valuable because when I learned those things, it was like a complete game changer for me, literally. I hope it wasn't a problem that I wasn't very energetic on this video because it's a morning and I hate recording videos on morning, but hey, I want to drop this as soon as possible because I know this will change so many people's lives, this knowledge. So thank you for watching and see you in the next one. Peace out.